Hi, and welcome, Freedom Fighters, Freedom Warriors. This is episode number 3 of Essential Talks, where you stay for the conversation and you leave empowered. I'm your host, Jamie Russo, and co-host Jessica. We have the pleasure of calling Mitch from Futuristic Fitness joining us today. This episode is going to cover the mandates, masks, the jab, in the place of employment, and the needs to talk about it because it's literally predominant in our society at this moment across Canada. It is sad, really, for many and a lot of people across Canada because we have to prepare for what's coming down the pipeline, and it's leaving people short with deadlines, with employment, being threatened by their employers. If they don't get the jab, then they have to choose between that or their job. So we are facing it, taking away some of our freedoms of choice. This is like no other jab before. So the consent should be behind it. And we're going to get into all of this through our discussion. And let's jump into this. Okay, so Colin is our guest, or Mitch. He has written some notice of liabilities, which he's going to talk about, that kind of cover all of the aspects that we're looking at throughout all these mandates. So I'm going to let Mitch come in and talk about some of the documentation of what he's written, and we're going to kind of stop him in between some things and ask some really good questions. So the floor is yours, Mitch. Welcome to our show.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. It's great to be on here, kind of, coming together and having this conversation and letting it out to the world to view it. So my name is Mitch. I'm the owner of Futuristic Fitness. Very similar to Jamie Russo, one of those original business owners that stayed open right at the beginning back in 2020. Kind of part of that group, early group that stayed open during the second provincial-wide lockdown. I'm one of the very few, much like Jamie, that actually stayed open successfully using a few different tactics like notice of liability and just being well-versed in kind of different legal and law kind of areas to help kind of back up the police and keep our services rolling. So so I've kind of developed a notice of liability. So since the beginning, I essentially, I didn't know anything about the law prior to this, so I just morally knew that this wasn't correct. So when I was kind of watching the lockdowns unfold and how things were unwinding, I just knew it wasn't right. I didn't agree with it. I guess my soul didn't accept it. So I was just like, I'm not going to take part in this. So obviously, being the first business staying open, law became something very much importance, because I had to understand how to, speak with the police, what laws I were going to be using to protect myself, and all of these things. So I kind of got embraced by a few teams. I was doing a little bit of work for Stand for Thee, and then I had a I would say more substantial group that I got involved with called Empower Movement, and we started learning, and I started learning kind of some unspoken laws that a lot of people don't know about, understanding merchant law and maritime law and how it's really a predominant part of the court system, and a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of lawyers aren't taught this, so very interesting stuff. So I used all that to actually design my own style of notice of liability. I had seen some other notices of liability floating around from this group that were very strong and have had a lot of success globally. So I kind of studied their notice of liability, what they were using and what laws they were using in their countries. And then I figured out how to apply it here in Canada. I took their documents, I studied them, and then I found those very same laws, and I started studying that very same law here in Canada and piecing it all together. And I've kind of put together, I call this kind of this master key of like, you know, it covers kind of the whole quarantines, masks, the vaccines, and it's meant to be implemented to try and just prevent all of this from being enforced onto us. And it expresses the legal provisions under the criminal code. So three of the main documents I use, and I think are kind of just the language in them and the history behind it. One of the strongest documents, the original set of laws here in Canada started in 1670. It's called the Hudson Bay Trade Charter. Most people don't even know this stuff, but it was actually incorporated. So Hudson Bay Trade Company started out as Prince Rupert's established company here in Canada when they first kind of came into Canada and started establishing the company. And then they incorporated into a company called Canada, and that's kind of where we are today. And we adopted all of these laws, and there's such old laws that most people don't know about them, but they're very significant because they're our original set of laws. So all laws that have came into place now have essentially stemmed from this document. So it's almost like going back in time and figuring out, okay, the most supreme laws, and they're still the most supreme laws here in Canada, the way I view them. And then it's tying in the criminal code and kind of how it all can kind of work together. So so I've presented put together a notice of liability. It's very strong. It kind of lays out the legal provisions as well that support kind of informed consent. So when you don't give someone informed consent, what informed consent is giving someone a type of information or a disclosure, and then laying out the pros, the cons, and then allowing someone, the consent aspect is allowing someone to make their own decision. For some reason, it seems like it's gone out the window in today's society related to everything that's COVID related in terms of this response, which by law, there's nothing to support any of this. And I don't think many people are having an easy time grasping that. I mean, I have some federal workers that, you know, got challenged with the whole, with the jab, and essentially what happened was they didn't even get to the point of having to use the notice of liability. They just simply asked their employer, you know, I choose not to disclose, and what law do you have that supports you being able to ask me and enforce this on me? And generally, most of them stop right there and don't even know how to continue, right? Because there's no real laws that support any of this. So, you know, you will get into those sticky situations where you are getting, you know, then threatened. And I always say when they take that next step in threatening you, well, now you have them on criminal laws or criminal code provisions related to assault, right? As soon as you get into a threat or an aggressive, indirect approach to try and force you into doing something, that constitutes assault. So that's what my document's all about, is they take that next step in trying to force you into doing something, and here's are the provisions to support it. The reason why the Hudson Bay Trade Charter is so important in regards to this notice of liability is because it's actually a commercial instrument. So what that is it's essentially, you can put dollar figures and commercial criminal codes down, and it's almost like your strategy of keeping out of the court system, right? So you issue these things, they have 14 days to reply, and then out of honor, you'll do 3 notices. And if they don't get back to you in the 3rd notice, it's like a guilty plea. So now you can move forward with whatever collections procedure you want, put a lien on their house. You can get a collections agency to collect from them. You can have them criminally charged. So it's kind of this unspoken strategy that almost no lawyers or anyone knows about, where you don't even have to use the courtroom, right? And there's these documents that give you that power, and they're kind of old documents, and it's kind of what I view as our strategy in regards to moving us forward.
Yeah. I can answer on you, Mitch. I'm just going to let everybody know that we're not giving any sort of legal advice on this. We're just presenting different ideas, different approaches for many people that you can choose to follow or not. None of this is legal advice at all. And I have read Mitch's notice of liability. Is very thorough. It's a very lengthy document, and it gives you the ability to tweak that document to what you would need it for. So whether you're in trouble with the mandatory masking, the mandatory jab, what they're trying to do with employment, your employer. You could use it for shopping centers, any place that you're looking to get service or product from. And when they're standing in your way, you can send it to them. And as Mitch was talking about sending out the notice of liability, you would want to send out a first, second, and a third notice. And by the time you get the third notice, if there is no response, they're in acquiesce. So which means they're agreeing into your contract. So, and the way Mitch has written this document is your employer, for example, as soon as they tell you that you have to do something that's not in your employee handbook or in the regulations of the company, they're recreating a new contract and they're trying to pull you in. So when you give them a notice of liability, you're pulling them into your contract. So yeah, I'm going to give the floor back to Mitch, and he can start to explain some of the different applications and also some of the body that's in his notice of liability with some of the laws and everything else. So take it away, Mitch.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jamie, for just confirming some of that. Definitely, I'm not a lawyer, so that's the one thing that's interesting about all this is technically, I can't give accurate legal support. Although it is interesting because one thing I do see that most of the lawyers, they are taking a path of bringing up the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. My document just doesn't even include that document because I view it as a weak provision. It's not actually a constitution, so it holds no real power. I try and stay strict to the laws, and I think for some reason, sorry about that. But yeah, so I try to stay really strict to the kind of the more superior laws, and I try to stay away from things like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms because they have sections in there that kind of give the government power over you. A lot of people don't realize that, but if you read Section 1, it's very clear that the government can kind of remove things, but they can only do that if you're using that set of laws. So essentially, the funny thing about that document is the fact that it didn't get it didn't get endorsed. So what that means is it actually didn't get royal assent. So it's like part of this legal fiction where it's almost not even real law. So it doesn't really, you have the option to use that document or not. So you kind of want to be careful anytime you're doing anything that's based on law. You really want to, you're setting your own stage, right? And that's always what I tell people is you're setting your own stage. You really have to be careful and you have to learn kind of what you're talking about, what provisions you're using and what laws you're using inside and out to be able to stand in that power and be able to express yourself. So one of the number one issues that I find with most people is I give them this document and they don't take time to understand it, right? Comprehension is key. I think one of the main reasons why we're kind of in this mess is because people don't take time to comprehend the law, and it's a very important aspect of, the world we live in, especially today. I keep it strictly based on the Hudson Bay Trade Charter. There's some provisions that I include from the Bill of Rights because the Bill of Rights is very similar to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but stronger language. And then I also use the Commercial Criminal Code, but you technically don't have to use the Bill of Rights because the Hudson Bay Trade Charter, it applies to everyone. So it's not just a document that applies to government entities on a federal level. It actually applies to every individual that's part of Canada. You have a citizenship, you're somehow part of this corporation, those laws apply to you. So that's the unique aspect about that document as well. And again, you can use it for a lot of different applications. You can go in, if a store refuses you service, you can kind of, you can apply it that way. If a workplace tries to deny you service, tries to fire you or something along those lines, you can still use it to be successful in either trying to keep your job or challenging them after you lose your job and them actually providing remedy. And then you can also do it to challenge the school system as well. So that's kind of what I've turned my gaze to the school system. That's my main operative right now, is because we're back into school here. We're seeing vaccine clinics roll out in the school system. So even there's two that they've caught me before I've been able to get there. Next week, I'm doing some major actions with a group of parents. I'm going to be wiping out about 6 different schools here in my area almost instantly next week, where we're going to be showing up with a group of teachers, group of parents, and we're going to be pushing these notices of liability forward strictly on the principal. So the principal is being pressured by public health to implement these type of things in their jurisdiction, right? Like those schools are they're responsible. They hold the liability. They're like essentially almost like the legal guardians when when they're at the school. But what's important to understand is you still are the biological parent, and you're still a legal guardian as well at all times, right? So if you have the power at the end of the day to challenge them and make a claim and bring that claim forward, and they have to understand that they do hold the liability. So the principle is kind of like easy pickings. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I was going to say with your document, that's the beauty of your notice of liability that you have written is you can use it for almost any single application by tweaking the document itself to fit your situation, of course. And what you were saying before earlier is a lot of people look at the document, it's a little overwhelming, but with any notice of liability anyone is going to submit, doesn't matter where it comes from, you need to know and comprehend every single word that's on that document, because if you get challenged, you need to know it inside out. This way you can defend what that piece of paper says. Now, your paperwork is supposed to work for you. You're supposed to allow it to work, but you also need to know exactly what it says so that you can defend it. And again, you said earlier, Mitch, that we're literally in this problem because we as Canadians have forgotten what our actual rights are. And because we have forgotten and our parents and our schools haven't taught us what our full rights are, we've been taken advantage of to this point, and now it's time to reclaim what all of our rights are. And these notices are very powerful. And also with the notice of liability that you wrote there, Mitch, you could also send it to the superintendent of the school and the CEO or head chair of the whole school board of Ontario, plus your local health unit. And you could do the police on the third notice, because you're going to make them aware of some of the criminal offenses that are being created onto you or your children in school or the workplace or anything else. So hitting the principal is really good. Hitting the superintendent, involving them, and then going up to the next level. If you put all 3 of them onto 3 notices, this kind of ensures what you're doing is going to be somewhat solidified because they're all on board. And in your notice, it also has a spot that you can put everybody labeled and their names and contacts. So they all are aware who is all getting this document. And as I said, on the third notice, you can give it directly to the police, just a copy of it, and to inform them the criminal activity that has taken place.
So just to cut in really quick, so I just want to mention that Mitch's documents and tutorial is going to be in the description for everyone to access afterwards. So everything we're referencing, it will be accessible in the description. And yeah, so back perfect. To you.
So, and I also do, if anyone does want to follow me on Facebook or jump into Zooms, I do quite often host kind of a Zoom meetings where I walk through the document. I show people how to use it. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing very soon here is I'm going to be having like recording videos of me actually filling out the document for like my daughter when I go forward with my group for the school system. And yeah, you guys are more than welcome to follow me, take a look at the document and learn it and just study it. So again, and like Jamie said, you want to understand every word. I understand that law can get confusing, but it's as easy as having your phone beside you and just studying all the definitions. Like you don't know a word, okay, define it, right? You don't know this word. Like heck, 60% of the words in this damn document I probably didn't understand at the beginning of this, right? I just sat there with a phone and I researched it all. even before when I was finding these legislations, because I kind of shaped this document myself with the help of having some formatting. But originally when I was learning these laws, it was all self-taught. So I was finding these laws, I was printing them out, I had a paper, I'm reading through them all, and then everything I don't understand, I'm defining it by like a law definition, and really understanding what I'm using here, because that's what we need to do this. Each of us, we need to do this to be able to bring us forward with success. I can't count how many people, I just started doing these Zoom calls where I demonstrate this NOL, and everyone is messaging me like hundreds of messages, right? And a lot of the a lot of the questions I'm getting, it's just like, you have to read it, you have to understand it. If you actually took the time, I wouldn't have this message right now, right? You can't, we gotta really kind of dig our way out of this, and kind of learn this stuff for ourselves, for sure. So that'll definitely be beneficial for everyone. And the document is designed in a way where if you have lost it all, so for example, being a business owner that's lost, probably $100,000 to $200,000 over the last year in the affecting of my business, and then holding back development and things like that. It's not easy. It's not hard to shape this document and send it off to the mayor, whoever was involved in that lockdown and stay-at-home order, and then sending it off to them and saying, well, this is how you're held liable, and this is the compensation that you owe me. Because a lot of that, what we're dealing with, a lot of people are dealing with hardship, but at the end of the day, who is presenting that hardship onto you? And they should be being held liable. And that's what this document is giving you the power to do, is holding people liable and providing compensation, taking it from them and giving it back to you where it belongs. Because a lot of these people too, what's important to note is some people are being motivated to push these policies forward. What I mean by that is they're probably getting paid a sum of money. The mayors kind of have these secret disclosed meetings with Bill Gates and stuff like that, and public health officials in regards to how they're going to continue to roll this stuff out. And then they're being tossed a substantial sum of money to continue with this agenda, right? Well, we need to understand how to create an accountability aspect that supersedes what they're benefiting, to make them think twice about what they're doing, right? That's the goal here, is to say, okay, you owe me this, have 30 people behind me saying, no, to your local mayor, you play a role in implementing these things. This is how we've lost. This is the compensation you owe us. And then they rethink kind of what they're doing. And that's really how we're going to provide remedy here, is holding people accountable and bringing compensation and having that money flow kind of back to us, the people, and having it stop being taken away from us and being put all up there where those 1% reside. So that's really the idea behind it as well too. So.
Yeah. Also, the other aspect is when you're putting in the notice of liability, while you're learning it, you need to decide what your end game is. So this is kind of a very critical thing. For some people, they just want, I just want my employer to leave me alone. I don't want the jab. I don't want to give up information. I don't want to wear a mask. I don't want to do any of the protocols. I don't want to be tested. So you just want your employer to back up. So if that's what you decide is right for you, then that's what you stand on. And you can utilize this document, the notice of liability, to get your employer to back up. And it's putting them on notice that they're going to be liable for harm that will be created onto you, but they're already starting to create harm. I've been trying to coach a bunch of nurses to move forward, and the struggle with any document is when people don't fully understand or comprehend what's on that document. Nobody can fight for you. You have to do your own fight. So this is where you have to educate yourself. And again, this is the reason why we're in this mess, is we all forgot what our rights are. So education is key in order for you to stand on your rights once you realize what those rights are, and knowing what you're going after, and then standing solid. And then this is how it kind of goes. So the biggest struggle I've had is with a lot of people wanting me to do the research for them, but nobody can do that because nobody can do your fight for you. And this is just a tool in our arsenal or in our toolbox that allows us to gain what it is we're after. So You would have to determine what the goal is for you, and then execute it. And also with this document is you're trying to pull whoever, I'm going to use the employer, for example. You're trying to pull your employer into negotiations with you, into your contract. So you want to resolve this issue. At the end of the day, you just want to resolve this issue. And in order to do that, when you get them into your contract, because they're pulling you into theirs, as soon as they say you have to get a jab or you're going to get fired, first off, that's a threat. That's extortion and blackmail. You know what I mean? So they're trying to coerce you into doing something, and they're threatening you by your livelihood. No one ever should threaten your survival. And in this modern world, that's our job. No one should ever threaten your survival in any way whatsoever. So this is where they're going totally wrong. So what you're trying to do is get them into a negotiation with you so that you can resolve the issue at hand and then move forward in a peaceful, honorable manner. That's what you're trying to do. So one of the things that I've gotten from quite a few people is they say, oh, I want to take a soft approach, but you were just threatened and you were blackmailed into doing something you don't want to do. So the question I've been asking people is, if you walked into work one day and the boss pulled you in the office and they had a big line of experimental drugs on the desk and they told you to snort it, would you do it? You know what I mean? And of course you wouldn't. So why are we doing, this experimental jab in order to keep our job? Whereas if you've seen the other, you'd walk right out and say, I can't do this. But here you want to take a soft approach. But meanwhile, they just threatened you and told you that they're going to not fire you, lay you off without pay, which is code word for fired. Let's call it what it is. So I want to kind of talk with you, Mitch, about, if you put in the first notice, the second notice, and then they respond, kind of what you would do with the response and how you would carry out with that, and just kind of the idea of why you'd want to pull them into that. Also, can you brief on the fee, the joiner fee? That's what it is, the joiner fee in that document. So tell us about the negotiation if we pull in the employer on the second notice, and then the joiner fee. Explain that as well to us. I think those are key points.
A joiner fee, and what that looks like is it prevents them from trying to pull you into a tribunal or a court, or trying to get them to off the paperwork to someone else. So if you notice, everyone's trying to pass the buck. So what that looks like is when you call up the principal, when you call up the mayor, and I've done it before. I've been in a meeting with the mayor just recently. He's like, no, it's public health. It's public health. At the end of the day, no, I know it's you implementing this rule. Whether or not public health is guiding you, that's another story. But you're the one implementing it. So when you don't have a joiner's fee, that's all they're going to do is they're going to offload the responsibility. So there's a joiner fee set to $10 million, and it says, no, you broke the law. This is between you and me. So you can legally put that joiner fee on there. To prevent them from trying to pull it into an area where they're going to try and pass the buck. So that's the way it's designed. Another one is pulling them into negotiations. So this silence, they get noted in default through insufficient reply, or I put them into a tacit agreement. So I define all of these things and I tell them how they're going to be put into these scenarios if they don't respond. Because I explain this and I define it, they can't scream ignorance, right? They can't just throw it in the garbage and be like, oh, I didn't know. It's like, no, I'm defining it. I'm telling you, this is the clause here where you have to reply because these are the laws that you've broken. So it forces them into a negotiation phase, and it prevents anyone from joining the contract. So that's it's very crucial. Almost no notice of liability that I've seen that's been designed by lawyers and people like that, they're all missing that aspect of things. So another one as well is you can definitely set a number on the terms of agreements, right? So when you get into conditional acceptance, it's stating, based on my affidavit that's built in, these are the laws you've broken. well, now, we kind of have to provide a remedy here. This is a honorable and a win-win scenario. So I'm saying you broke the law, and you're trying to persuade me, whether or not I've lost time work, or because of the lockdown I lost a bunch of revenue. You're putting that number and the dollar sign in the actual terms, conditional acceptance clause, where that's part of the negotiation is a number or a dollar sign, and they have to respond. And if they give you a type of response, I even define what I would call an insufficient response. And the reason I have that in there is because if they try to argue something that is like so it doesn't relate, it's not something of importance, if you don't actually come back with an appropriate rebuttal that's like substantial based on law, then it classifies as insufficient reply. I'm here to either talk about a solution or the law. There's no in betweens. Oh, does the jab have more of a risk than COVID and all of those things? It's like, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the law and the solution. And unless you have something substantial to bring to the table that's going to provide solution and remedy, or unless you bring some laws to the table that supersede mine, which I know you can't do because I've been very, very educated and very, I'll say, particular about what I've selected to be part of that notice of liability. So I'm painting them in a corner, like I'm pushing them in a corner and saying, there's no way out. You have to deal with this, and you have to deal with this in an appropriate manner. And I had a pretty cool conversation with a detective last night, and I'm going to be getting a fair number of police on my side in different jurisdictions. I don't want to talk too much on that or disclose too much information on that yet. But one thing I do have to say too is that they try to just push this to the side. Well, I've got another trick up my sleeve as well, because if you just try to push it to the side and you get placed into tacit agreement, well, you just agreed that you're guilty to all those provisions that I included in that NOL. And now I can put forward documents to have you arrested. So it's like, which way do you want to go with this? I have a feeling of ignorance that a lot of these people are going to try and ignore these documents, and things might get a little messy, but at the end of the day, they put themselves in that position. They're the ones making these calls. They should know better, right? Whenever you take on a duty or a role pertaining to a mayor or a principal, you should understand the liability that you're taking on. You're generally getting paid a substantial salary and a substantial amount of money. Maybe you should take the time to understand what comes with that salary at the end of the day. So that's kind of, where we're heading with this. And it's a pretty crafty document, I have to say. So
the other thing I like about your document is it winds up stating that whoever you're writing the document to, it includes the agents that are under them. So that means for the principal, it's all teachers. So if a teacher winds up putting your kid back in a mask, that's under the principal's guidance. So they're still on the hook. It also winds up talking about if they wind up resigning and somebody else steps in to take their role, like we watched with Dr. David Williams, and now we have Dr. Moore in there. When you write a notice like this, and the way you worded it, it doesn't matter that the new person is in, they take on the notice as well. So if they decide to carry on with it, they're still liable and on the hook for it, and they can't get out of it because it's already in effect. Also, I like the criminal aspect that you can wind up. For example, you could charge the CEO of any of the company with criminal offenses, and then you can put a lien on their house when you go for collections. So basically what you're doing is you're putting a CEO into criminal charges, potentially, and you're also putting them into a bad credit rating. And this is something they really want to avoid because this can alter a lot of their careers down the road. But it's no different than them firing you over not taking the jab. In fact, we're hitting them in the pocketbook where a lot of these people are thinking the most about. They care more about their bank account and their image than they do their employees, which is you, whoever is listening to us. And this document covers all of that. And this is the reason why I really like this notice of liability, because it covers so many aspects. And, the average person can use it with a little bit of education and really implement it and apply it. So some of the best ways that you would do it, again, I'm just going to kind of recap. You put in first, second, and a third notice of liability. The way you would do the first one, you'd have that extremely thorough. The second one, you can shorten it up, just kind of hit more of your major points. And I wouldn't add anything else into it. You could just maybe start it out with, I have not received your response. And then you can put in that second one. Then, you give them X amount of time. And then you can put in the third one. The third one, you just want to do just basic points and say you still haven't responded. And if I don't have the response within the 14 days of requirement, you have acquiesced and agreed to my contract. So that would be the way you would do it. I'd also recommend the way that you would deliver it is if you either hand deliver it, you record it, because this is your evidence that they got it and they can't say that they didn't get it. You would send it by fax and email, or you could do registered mail. So basically you want three methods: hand delivered or registered mail. This is proof they got it. Email, and then fax. And now they can't claim that they did not receive it. Keep all your receipts, especially with registered mail, or your video, because these are your solid proof that they've received it, and then they can't just back out of it. Is there any questions you want to ask, Jessica? I'm pretty sure you got a few.
Thanks. Yes. And so I just had a couple of questions. So what kind of pushback do you foresee someone getting if presenting this? So for example, my employer is, telling me that I have to get this jab, making all sorts of veiled threats, insinuations, things like that, and really harassing me. And I give them this. What do you, have you seen anything of anyone presenting this yet, and what kind of pushback they would get, or what do you foresee as being a potential pushback, and any advice of how you would push through on that?
Yeah, so I just want to first start by the document hasn't quite been used yet. I'm going to be putting it into action this week, and we're going to be seeing how things roll out. The one thing I want to make sure everyone understands is not everyone is going to understand how to reply or what to do. So, you could hand in this document and get fired the next day, right? You have to understand that not everyone fully understands law. So if that does ever happen, of course, now you have even a greater compensation on your hands where now you can hold them accountable for your job, right? A lot of them, I think, will read the document, get a pretty good idea of what you're bringing to the table, and probably step back fairly quick. Will it escalate maybe a situation here and there because they're unsure how to move forward? You may see that, but I think more often than not, you're going to see people read this document, understand it, and step back because most people aren't that well versed in law. So they're going to read these provisions and probably not know how to respond. Because you put that joiner fee on them, it prevents them from trying to go elsewhere to have someone else come into that situation. So I think really you're going to see just most of the harm stop almost immediately. You may see some people not know how to respond. The escalation might increase a little bit. You never know, but that's one reason why I try to tell everyone, it's not a guarantee, right? We're using this new strategy in this document that I've designed, and definitely I know it's going to be a tool that works in the long run. No matter what, it's going to work later down the road. But yeah, you might see, most of the time you'll see the harm end. They're going to stop trying to enforce it, and they're going to sit back down in their seat. That's probably the most frequent reaction you're going to get. So. And Jamie actually touched on it based on the successors and assignees. So I know that the team that I'm working with is that, because I haven't done this all on my own. I created the document on my own. So I did design the document, but I've seen these type of documents used before. And the documents that I've used, they very frequently have people leave their post. So they're very frequently, they have people part of a company that completely, they're saying, no more am I going to be involved in this. This has gotten too real for me. I'm out of here. and they leave, right? So you might even see that. You might even see people leaving their positions and not wanting to be involved in this anymore. I mean, I have a hard time thinking that a principal is making a large enough salary at the end of the day to take on the informed consent aspect and liability of what's going on in those schools. Like, that's substantial. You have one kid suffer from an adverse side effect, and that principal is done for life. Like, their entire lively salary is probably out the window for good. And it's like, do they understand this? Something tells me they don't, right? And they're just ignorant. They're just yes men or yes women type of people, and they're just agreeing with it, and they really don't understand where this is going to end. And you're painting that picture for them, right? You're painting that picture, and you're saying, this is what you are liable. This is how you're liable. And I think a lot of people, you're going to see maybe people leave their posts. You're going to see people, stop the harm. You're going to see remedy at the end of the day, either or. However it ends, you definitely see some money, which is really what we're looking for today. And you see this type of language in old laws as well when it pertains to heirs and successors. Oh, sorry. So I just stated that you're gonna see remedy. It's gonna provide remedy one way or another. And the one thing that I did want to outline as well is when you see the successors and assignees, you actually see this type of language in old laws, and a lot of people don't understand that. I've had people challenge me with this document with all kinds of stuff, and the one girl came to me and she was she called me and says, well, the queen is no longer our principal, blah 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 blah, and she's going on like this. And I told her, I said, well, these laws that I'm using pertain to successors and assignees. It says that right there in the laws. Sure, the criminal code pertains to the queen, and there are laws in there that pertain to the queen, but the laws that I'm standing on that are the most substantial are laws that actually, they trickle down to all successors and assignees. So you see this type of language in old laws, and that's how they're applied onto the land forever and always. The term is called perpetuity. So they're placed out of perpetuity, and they can't be removed. We would have to completely, be part of a completely different corporation. It couldn't be Canada anymore if that was the case. So yeah, that's you'll see a number of responses, but at the end of the day, I think it'll all turn out to be a positive one at the end when everything's said and done.
And that's perfect. Honestly, I could foresee that being very much the reaction that people would have. I mean, when you look at this document, it's extremely comprehensive, and I would be, if I was somebody in a position of authority being handed something like this, I think I'd be pretty damn intimidated, to be honest. Yeah. And so, so I can definitely see the person, basically considering at that point just leaving their job and saying, you know what, I don't need to be, my job isn't worth being served this kind of stuff. I don't know if I want to be put in this kind of position. So I completely agree. I did want to say, because of the level of information that's in this document and how deep it goes, do you recommend at all having any printed and highlighted copies of any of these codes and laws when you're going to be presenting them to the person you're serving it to, in case you need to reference them or anything like that? Like, do you find that would be a good idea? And if you think, or otherwise?
So I briefly cap on it. So what I do is, like, when I talk about like the jab and like the enforcement of these medical procedures, I just simply say liberty of person's been breached. So that's kind of like touching on, this law. It secures like liberty of person through this law, and it's stated that you do have liberties as an individual. Well, when you're forcing them, the liberty of that individual is breached. So I try to kind of highlight like the aspects of the law. There's some of the criminal code where I've actually taken out the sections and I've included them there. The interesting part is when you go back in history and you find these laws, it's actually easier to understand than statute law, because statute law is designed in a way to argue back and forth. You're having small little sections of this, small little sections of that, and it's like, it's a back and forth game. These laws are just set in stone. These are the original laws, and they're actually fairly easy. When you read through the document, you'll understand. You might have to read it. I know I read through it about 5-6 times to really kind of get the, and researched a lot of definitions to understand it. But yeah, I briefly kind of highlight, the sections that are supposed to be, that are really important, right? So I think the liberty of person is breached when you do enforce these things. So that's out of the Hudson Bay Trade Charter, where we're guaranteed liberties. But again, I just touch on it so people kind of get an idea of, where I'm heading with this. So yeah, so most laws are pretty, they're highlighted. You'll get the important aspects of it anyways, for sure.
Perfect. That was really all the questions I had for you. This is fantastic. This document, like I said, is extremely comprehensive. I agree with you that there's just too many people who are trying to pass the buck right now to someone else's responsibility. I actually dealt with that last week. We did a podcast where we featured a recording I'd made with a police detective out of the Toronto Police Force because of the front page article that was posted in the Toronto Star about unjabbed people should die, all this kind of stuff. It was honestly horrendous. And so I called him and he tried to pass saying, oh, it's the newspaper, oh, it's, it's the politicians. And I'm like, yeah, and you guys are the ones that arbitrate the law, so you kind of need some action on that. So it's really nice to have something like this where, you're putting them on notice and they really have no way of being able to ignore it without, it being assumed that they're agreeing to it. So this is fantastic. Jamie, is there anything else that you wanted to add into questions or anything else?
Yeah, I'll add a couple of things in there. So you'll notice at the end of this document, and again, we're sharing all the links, so everyone's going to be able to access this documents. Go ahead and follow Colin Mitchell Hewison, right? On Facebook. He's doing some Zoom calls and trying to educate people the best we can on this document. Me and Mitch have teamed up a couple of times to talk about it in ways that you could apply this. So at the end of the document, it winds up having a spot that it says to get notarized. If you're having trouble getting it notarized, you can get 3 individuals, 3 men and women, to sign the document, and it's equivalent because now you have 3 witnesses. So having 4 signatures within the document can be equivalent to a notary, especially if it winds up going to court, because you have it witnessed by 3 individuals, so it solidifies the likelihood of it being truth. Plus, on top of that, I wanted to say that I myself, I've been standing in common law. So I have written notice of liabilities to quite a few people across Ontario and my local area. So right in the beginning of February 11th, I wound up opening. I advertised for 2 weeks. The health board, police, everybody were right at my door. February 12th, I got hit again. Like I got hit 3 times. I closed for a short time. I call it armoring up. I went and learned a bunch of stuff. I wrote notices of liability within common law. I sent it to a bunch of people, first, second, and final notice. No one has been back at my door. Before we were allowed to open at the last lockdown, the health department phoned me because they had a complaint, so they didn't come to my door. Mitch himself has done the notice of liabilities as well. In his area, he had quite a few encounters, so he's not shy from the encounters. And eventually they backed up off of him as well. So we both believe that we're proof that the notice of liabilities do work. You can get results from them, provided you know what you're talking about, you educate yourself, and you're able to be well-versed in the conversation you may have thereafter with any individual that's trying to do any of this harm towards you or trespass on you. Provided you're well-versed, you can really back them up. So so this notice, I see it being able to apply it in many different ways. The way that I believe notice of liabilities really work is if you can paint somebody into a corner. So a lot of times you're either giving them a lot of facts or asking them questions like, just any question that they can't answer because they don't have it. So Mitch mentioned earlier that you can ask them, what law do you have to back up what you're doing? Well, if they don't have a law to back it up, they can't answer you. So the more questions you're able to ask that they can't answer, you painted them into a corner, and they usually drop it like a hot potato and they just walk right away from it. So Yeah, so Mitch is taking the approach with the schools. I've been trying to coordinate with health workers, healthcare workers. I have a few of them that have been looking at the notice of liability. Some of them have chosen other ones, but we give the same advice. No matter which one you use, you need to know it inside out. I believe that Mitch's notice of liability covers so many points, it's hard for them to get out of that corner. So it's really worth the read, it's worth the research, and it's worth utilizing just because of these factors that are within it. And again, we can't give legal advice. We're not giving legal advice. We're just telling you and sharing ideas. And we know these things work because we've seen them work with other individuals. Myself and Mitch have both had notice of liabilities working for us. And so this is how we really know that they will work. I'm going to get Mitch back on here. He can fill us in a little bit with his approach for the school. I know he doesn't want to give up too much. And also any of the contact information to get a hold of him. And yes, also mention your GoFundMe, Mitch, and kind of what that is all about.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to touch on a few things too that was very, it was good that you brought up. It was related to the police and how much I've dealt with the police. So they came to my facility a number of times. I've dealt with them a fair bit. The actual, their presence and the pressure that they put onto me changed when I started using different legislation. So when I stopped citing the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, they no longer showed up at my place anymore. They started to understand that I was kind of superseding them in regards to the law, and that I was going to be in a more of a winning position in the courts. So they kind of started to understand where we were heading with this, and they decided no longer to visit my establishment. This happened about 6 months ago. So and since then I've been smooth sailing, and they don't even want to speak to me anymore. So it's the more you learn, the better off you are, because the stronger you can approach these individuals, and the more you stand up to them. And then once they start to understand that they're probably going to be on the losing side, they really back up and start to think twice. So I used a notice of liability regarding trespassing, and then once I got away from the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it made a big difference because they started to realize I wouldn't be using weak legislations. And then again, so with my school, that's really my main operative. I've created some groups, and it's just getting my municipal groups and everyone in my communities to come together. We're just going to start this, and it's already growing exponentially. I mean, I live in a small community, and I've already got some good numbers behind me. We're ready to take action. Next week, you're going to see some videos going up, very similar to some of the other videos you've seen of I believe, just kind of kids going back into that school system with no mask and going back and living their lives again. And, I have some teachers on my side too, and they can't wait because they know what's going to happen once the ball starts rolling. It's just going to snowball quite quickly, and we're going to have all the kids kind of back to normal again. I'm prepared for the whole demonizing us and being like, oh my God, those kids are germ spreaders. But at the end of the day, they're really not. I mean, everyone's, I think, health is their own responsibility. Right. So just take care of yourself, eat healthy, make sure you get lots of sunlight, vitamin D during those darker months. And so I think I'm trying to get past the whole era where we're just afraid of each other and treating everyone like it's some type of infectious disease. It's not how life is supposed to be lived, and especially not with our kids, right? Kids are, I think, the only reason I really like the education system. Like, I could kind of tell at a young age I was being indoctrinated. I could care less about school. It was this social aspect, right? Like, people go to school to be social and communicate and share a smile and have friends. And, they're trying to take all of that away, right? Keep you in a box, keep a mask over your face. I mean, it's horrendous. So that's my number one goal here is taking back our school system and helping people understand that, this isn't just about me. Because that's kind of the way I've been demonized since the beginning as well, is everyone thinking this is like, all about me and my business. It's like, no, it's really about everyone and fighting for everyone and getting people back to normal and helping them understand that this wasn't right since the beginning. So that's all I've got here, guys. I also have a GoFundMe as well. So it's just I have taken a lot of time away from my business to, facilitate groups like this, study this legislation, put these documents together. So I do have a GoFundMe, and if anyone wants to touch on that, just search up Futuristic Fitness and legal support. And yeah, you can support me that way as well. If you guys have any questions, try to reach out to me. I know I'm kind of backed up right now in trying to help people along, but I'll continue to try and provide support to others when I get time. So if you guys do have questions, you want to see videos, you want to see the documents and stuff like that, always feel free to reach out. Colin Mitchell Hewison on Facebook, just under the spelt out there. Perfect. So if you guys want to search me up on Facebook, all the power to you. Thanks for having me on the show, guys. It's been awesome. So we kept it under an hour, so that's good.
Awesome, Mitch. Thank you so much for joining us. That was amazing.
Yes, thank you. Yes, lovely
Awesome.
advice. And like I said,
Thanks,
this
guys.
is fantastic. Yeah, absolutely fantastic having you on. And like I said, I really appreciate the time you've taken and explaining all this. And I look forward to seeing more people implementing this. This is gonna be great.
Awesome. Thank you, guys, for sure.
Thank you. Have a great night, Mitch.
Yeah,
we'll see you later. Maybe we'll get you on after we get some results with those teachers.
Yeah, for sure. It'll come quick. I'm positive. So we'll stay in touch. See you guys.
Bye.
Wow, that was great. Mitch, he knows his stuff inside out. I've been talking with Mitch for a very long time. That guy is just wonderful. He's he's a powerhouse, has a lot of knowledge. And as I said, me and him have been working together. We like each other's style. We got a little bit of a different aspect on how we approach everything. So basically, with this document that Mitch has written, you can utilize this in many, many different ways. You can use it for masks. You could use it for the jab. You can use it for employment. Pretty much anything that's going on with the protocols or the mandates, you can use it from a business perspective, a business owner. You can use it as a consumer. You can also use it as a student in school, a teacher, employment, everything. So is literally the sky's the limit on this, where you can apply it and how you can apply it with the document. I wouldn't chop it up too much. Certain things you can kind of tweak it a bit for your situation and where you're going to utilize it to apply it, right? So you have any final words on this episode, Jessica?
Is just self-assurance is really infectious. I gotta admit, it really leaves you very empowered, and I really like that. And it honestly, it really does pay to be informed. And so the more knowledge that you have, the more confidence you're going to have. And so like we've said in I think an episode before this, no one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. And so there are people that'll help guide you through certain things and provide you, some resources that you might not have been aware of. But the less that you rely on other people to save you and the more empowered that you become yourself, the far better off you're going to be. And so this document, again, has amazing resources in it, links below to that, and again on his Facebook page. But definitely look into the legislation yourself. You'll be pleasantly surprised at how much we have backing us up in this corner. It really is fantastic to see this, and it's really well put together, and it's left me feeling really empowered. So I feel great. This is lovely.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel really empowered. I've been, pushing this document as well, like spreading it as far and wide as I can. So for everybody that is watching this, if you want to get a hold of these documents and you can't find Mitch, you can find myself, Jessica, Kimberly, any one of us, and we will make sure that we pass on these documents. And again, the biggest thing that we can do to help ourselves is gain that knowledge. Knowledge is king, right? So we need to know what our rights are and how to defend them. And once you know what your rights are, and you won't fall off your stance, because they won't be able to push you off that. So I cannot promote that enough. It's been far too long that we've allowed these things to happen and we don't know our own rights, and we need to take those rights back. And it's not that we're taking them back, we just need to defend them, right? Because no one really took them away from us. You can only give them up. So once you start to defending them, then you regain your own power and your own rights back. Also, I'd like to mention, we are all a part of We Are All Essential. So if you are unfamiliar with that network, weareallessential.ca. You can go on there as a business owner, join our network. What the network offers you is we do 2 Zoom calls a week, and we also have a couple of Telegram chats. One is the network chat and one is an SOS chat. So if during any lockdown you're going through a little bit of a stressful point, you decide to open up your business and you have police, health officials, anyone at your door, we like to respond to you in that SOS chat and walk you through it. So you have multi-members that are giving you advice during those times that could be the most stressful. So I highly recommend it as a business owner. Get involved, network with like-minded individuals. This creates power. A lot of knowledge goes through our whole network. And also, Mitch's documents are on We Are All Essential website, so you can access them there as well. So we've made it nice and easy for you. So again, get involved. And if you're not a business owner, I could not recommend enough to become a volunteer. We need as many shoulders to carry this weight as possible. So you can do your part, become a volunteer, and help out the businesses in your area, and help out just all the way around. So thank you so much for joining us again. We can't wait till episode 4.
See you next time.